Good evening, everyone. Tonight on Police Off the Cuff, an 84-year-old grandmother, Nancy Guthrie, is entering day 6 since she's been kidnapped. She disappeared from her own bedroom when investigators are now calling a targeted kidnapping. A ransom note, traces of blood near the doorway, and electronic breadcrumbs have launched a multi-state manhunt. We're going to break down the timeline minute by minute, what the crime scene tells us, how negotiators handle ransom demands, and why detectives are zeroing in on digital evidence and people close to the family. This is real crime, real investigation, real consequences. And tonight, joining us, I have the most outstanding police guest that you've seen on any channel, anywhere on this earth. And from straight out of Brooklyn, I've retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Billy.
And we also have retired NYPD Sergeant, man of reason, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, the affable Michael Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good evening, guys. Good to see you.
And every once in a while, we get a superstar to come on the show, and I gave him exactly like 4 hours notice, and I called Jack Cambria, the most experienced hostage negotiator in the world, absolutely in the world. And everyone's been trying to get him on the show, but he's on this show. And I just want to read a little bit about Jack Cambria. And this is right from Jack. About me. My career took me from precinct uniform and plainclothes patrol in Brooklyn's 72nd precinct in Sunset Park as a police officer, sergeant, and lieutenant. I also served in the emergency service unit, ESU, for 16 years, whose primary focus is to provide rescue, tactical, and counterterrorism services to the city of New York. I had the good fortune to be assigned to ESU in the same 3 ranks. I was then selected to command the elite hostage negotiation team, HNT, where I coordinated the response of over 100 trained negotiators who responded to approximately 40 assignments per month. I remained in my assignment with HNT for over 14 years. So what was everyone waiting for to get this guy on their show? Well, welcome to the show, retired NYPD Lieutenant Jack Cambria. Welcome, Jack.
Well, hello to everyone, and thank you for that great build-up. I'm not worthy of such praise, but I do appreciate that. Thank you, Bill.
Well, hello, Jack, I read it. I read it was written by you, so I just had to read it.
There you go. Oh, my gosh.
So we're going to get into that in a second, but first, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
I'd like to remind everyone that the Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. So I'm going to bring everyone back into the show. You know, Jack, what we want to specifically what we want to talk to you about is just in about the last few hours, they received another note allegedly from the hostage takers, from the kidnappers.
Sure.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of investigation involved in determining whether that note is legitimate. But, Jack, it's a very tense situation in talking to hostage takers as well as its kidnappers. Is there a methodology? Is there a method to your madness? Let me put it that way, Jack.
Well, Bill, first off, we have to try to establish a dialogue. And that just assumes that there's going to be 2 parties speaking, right? In the police context, of course, the police hostage negotiator, and then, as we know, as the subject, in this case, the hostage taker. So it's going to be a tough go because probably more likely than not, they're not going to want to speak to the police. They're going to want to speak to a family member, and probably that's it, But let's assume that we do get them on the phone and they are willing to talk to us. Well, they're going to be very cautious, extremely cautious, as is the case in any type of negotiation when we're dealing with a subject of a criminal event. Somebody just committed a murder. We have them barricaded in the location. We're speaking to them. They're holding a family member hostage. They're going to be extremely cautious to talk to us, right? Because they're wondering about what's going to happen to them, So what we try to do is motivate people's behavior and get them to talk to us. We try to accentuate some positive attributes, if there are any. Maybe one might be, look, nobody's been hurt up to this point, so it's not so bad. We can work with that. You may have to take an arrest, but the charges won't be, escalated to a point where you're going to do the rest of your life maybe in jail. So we're going to try to make a weak case into a strong case. I'd like to then, if they start to talk to me and they're making they're getting some realization in their mind that there's no way out, because up to this point they're holding all the cards, and particularly in this case, in the Guthrie case, the police don't know where the subject is. They don't know where she is. There's really very little to go on. At least that's what's being reported to the media. So they're kind of holding all the cards at this point. So what do we have to offer in this case? But what I would try to do, and what I actually have done, and I've done this in the past with the major case squad in the NYPD, try to establish some sort of proof of life. So how do we know they're alive? Well, ideally, we'd like to see a current picture with the newspaper, today's headline on it. If we can get that, they'd have to text us to us, send us a text message or a picture of that. They probably don't want to do. They don't give up their phone number because they know that they can be tracked at that point. Another way to do that, if we have them on the phone, we can ask a question that only that subject, only the hostage would know. You have a nickname for your grandchild. Find out that name for me. What's the name of your doctor's or your cardiologist's name? The name of your cardiologist. Something that only she would know and the hostage taker would not. And once we establish that information, we can be relatively certain then, because they just obtained that information, that maybe she's still alive in this case. Also remind him, again, trying to motivating his behavior. We'll assume it's a him, motivating his behavior by letting him know that he is now responsible for that hostage. He decided to take a hostage. So now he is responsible for that hostage's well-being. So, for example, she needs medication. They already put out with the Guthrie case that she needs medication. She doesn't have a medication. Let's say it's heart medication. She doesn't have that medication. Due to the stress of this situation, she may have a heart attack and die. And if that happens, then he will be held legally liable under the law. It's called felony murder. If you die in the commission of a felony, whether that subject shot her or stabbed her, doesn't matter. He didn't do that. But the fact that he committed that felony, and she'd probably still be alive if he did not commit that felony, and where she was a participant, then he's going to be held liable under the law. So that's why I would try to accentuate the positive side of that, saying, listen, she's not hurt yet. She's still very much with us. We can work with that. If she dies and you're going to be apprehended, more likely than not, then you're going to be probably facing a life sentence if it's in New York State. I don't know what the laws are in
Arizona.
But yeah, it might be the murder, might be the death penalty. So those are some of the kind of issues I try to speak to that subject about, if he was even willing to talk to me as a police officer.
Well, Jack, let me just update you a little bit. There is no conversation. The conversation is coming indirectly through a note or notes now sent via email. So the emails aren't coming to law enforcement. The last one went to a TV station in Arizona, and the first one allegedly went to another TV station named TMZ. So that exacerbates the problem for police also, because it gets the press involved to a point where they get in the way, in my opinion. The press gets in the way and they start to feel like they're running things, and they start to feel like law enforcement must be transparent. I hate that word because it doesn't belong in law enforcement. We don't have to be transparent with you, media. We can play you like a violin, and then you try to play us like a violin. When we saw that sheriff from Arizona, Sheriff Nanos, when he was interviewed by Banfield, she ran the show. That should never happen. He should say, no, I'm not answering that. No, none of your business. Shut up. Whatever he has to say. It was ridiculous. She was playing him like a violin, and you can't let that happen. Phil.
Yeah, we talked about the press conferences. The messaging doesn't seem to be very good, in my opinion. I don't want to criticize our law enforcement agencies or law enforcement officers, but it's exactly what Bill just pointed out. When you give an interview, you're not being interrogated. You're giving information. Perhaps you want to answer a few of the questions, and there's certain things that are not going to be privileged to the public, especially with such a high-profile and sensitive case of this nature. So with that said, I think perhaps he was without sleep, whatever it was. He did way too many interviews. He said a whole lot of nothing. And then he was giving answers to things by being indirect. He's answering a question, yes, no. And then he gets to a question like, is the brother-in-law a suspect? And he says, well, everybody's a suspect. So it's kind of like he's not really answering, but he is answering. So that part of it, the messaging, not good. I think Jack made some great points about what needs to be done with regard to the kidnappers, the people that are responsible for sending these ransom notes. Now, I saw something earlier, and I thought it was very, very important to this case. The note, whatever it was, whether it be an email or an actual paper note, there's people that can analyze it. There are technicians within the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. They can analyze the verbiage of the note, and they will be able to ascertain if it's written by male, female, whether it's someone that is from this country or from another country. So I think that's going to be really, really a high focus on what's going to be taking place right now. They need to, they've had 2 contacts, which they believe could be from the actual kidnappers. Perhaps there was something in there in the first contact that leads us to believe that it's the same person on this contact, since they did notify the same news agency. But again, there's so many different ways of manipulating stuff on the internet today with AI and stuff. So they have to really be careful. There were 2 cases where notes were sent or some type of communication, and they were hoaxes and people were arrested. So they're able to do that. They've deciphered that. And I think that with this latest one, they really have to analyze what the verbiage is and see where it's going to take them. What are they demanding? And I think that we're going to come to a conclusion with it sooner or later. I
think so,
I stated earlier that I don't think that. Say again?
So let me ask you, the 3 of you, you were on the investigative end of it. I was not. I was more the negotiation end of it, policing, the tactical end of it, the rescue end of it, and the emergency service. But when you send an email, is there not an IP address attached to that so they can maybe track that IP address?
Let me just address that with someone from the chat. At James C5022, the note today had a different IP, but used the same secret server, something like a Tor. So you get these computer geeks, and we love computer geeks because we had them on the NYPD, and they did a great job ascertaining whether this was the same note, came from the same computer, where it came from, and then we could follow it up. As you know, Jack, you did a lot of work with TARU, Technical Assistance Response Unit, with cell phones and all of that stuff. All of that is usually coming into play. License plate readers, all of those things. It's frustrating that day 6 has gone by and this 84-year-old woman is still hasn't been recovered. And we have to worry about her from a perspective, she's not getting her medication. And as you said, Jack, if she dies, these kidnappers could be charged with murder, with felony murder. Professor Mike.
Yeah, I guess, Jack, I just got a question for you. We've touched on this in the previous shows in this case where it seems like law enforcement, they may or probably be making some tremendous headway, but the way that they're going about it doesn't instill a lot of public confidence. From your perspective, trying to negotiate through a conduit of like news stations like, TMZ and things like that, how could the police, if you in their position as a hostage negotiator, how could you get control of the situation? Because I would think at this point, the hostage takers may feel like they're still in control, like they still have the upper hand in this situation. How could you get the upper hand as a law enforcement officer, hostage person in this situation?
Well, what you say, Mike, is so true. Just this last, now it's 6 days, I had no less than at least 8 different messaging. I had CBS News call me up on my cell phone yesterday, right? Looking for a request for interview. I've got about 5 or 6 different emails from different news networks wanting me to come on their show, and I don't really need to do that, so I don't. I don't really do it. But then I got my dear friend Bill Cannon call me up, so of course I'm there for my friend Bill. But there's all different information that is being put out there. I have to kind of wade through all that as a negotiator. I'm trying to get to the human part of it and trying to get that. What's making this individual tick? What's his psychology? What am I trying to figure out about this individual and try to motivate his behavior? As I had mentioned, why is this important to you? To give this up, to release the hostage and maybe try to save yourself a little bit here. You're gonna take an arrest, no doubt. But sometimes the courts may consider that you're a little compassionate and you let that individual go. You gave yourself up. That might weigh into a jury's decision or a judge's decision regarding sentencing. So it's about I have to wade through all that media stuff because there's all different reports being put out there, and we all know, dealt with the media for our careers, how they can be. They try to interrogate, to use Bill's words, instead of asking the questions. And it's up to us to control that as best we can. And that's one of the reasons I don't want to do these shows, because they're going to try to guide me into a certain response. So leading type questions, trying to get an answer that they're looking for. For the media. So I've been doing this a long time, so I know not to go down that path. But someone maybe who's less experienced with the media, maybe the sheriff in Pullman County, this is like the biggest case he's ever had under his watch, probably. So he's a little inexperienced with the media, maybe. So he's going to be, kind of being a little intimidated by them. But it's a tough go, and the best policy, I think, is just not to really deal with the media when conducting investigations. Right, just kind of keep it in house.
Jack, we have to control them, not the other way around. I just want to read something from the New York Post. TMZ founder Harvey Levin believes that Savannah Guthrie's kidnapped mother could be being held in the radius of Tucson, as he described the purported ransom email as very specific and well organized. Levin said on Hannity after Thursday, he said on Hannity that I'm losing my spot because Levin said on Hannity that Monday's deadline is far more consequential after Thursday's came and went, with kidnappers demanding the family shell out millions in Bitcoin for the safe return of the NBC Today anchor's 84-year-old mother. The letter begins by saying she is safe but scared, and they go on to say she knows exactly what the demand is. So they are, through us, TMZ, telling the family, and obviously the sheriff's department gave the family the letter we received, exactly what they're demanding, and they're saying that Nancy is aware of it. The celebrity news mogul said the ransom email's contents make him suspect the sender is close by the area, potentially still in the vicinity of Tucson where Nancy vanished. There is a phrase in this email that absolutely makes me believe, this is Harvey Levin, that the person who wrote this, and if they're telling the truth, that Nancy is within the radius of the Tucson area, not in Tucson right now, but in a radius, he said. It could be New Mexico, and I don't know how far, but I think at least what the authorities have is why they've got a radius, and that's something. He said the letter called for crypto to be transferred to a legitimate yet unidentified Bitcoin address, and that the demands appeared carefully structured and strategically crafted. Even that, I don't like that, because what expertise does Harvey Levin have that he's telling law enforcement that she's in the two? How the hell do you know that, dude? And law enforcement's got to say, look, we'll take care of this. Well, we're the ones doing this investigation, not Harvey Levin from TMZ. And I think people get so intimidated and sometimes so enamored with the cameras and they want to be on the air that they'll let the press run things. And that's dangerous. You know why? Because this lady's life is in danger. It's day number 6, Phil.
Everybody's got an opinion, obviously, but what Levin doesn't realize is that he has a tremendous amount of audience and listeners and followers, so it's getting out to a lot of people. I don't think that something that he says is going to control what direction this investigation is going to take. I said this before we went on the air. Some vehicle came into that area, one or more people took that woman, kidnapped her, and they left the area. There was video footage earlier today of the area, not directly close to where the house where Nancy was taken from, but within a few blocks away, there was a lot of cameras. So I am certain that there are cameras that picked up that vehicle that had to go in and out of that location, unless they did what Harvey Levin said and stood just a couple of blocks away, which is absolutely, I think, not even in the equation at this point. But there was also reports of a white van earlier that day that was being suspicious in some way or manner. And there was also a local gas station that they went over and they interviewed, and they said, yes, the FBI was here and they wanted to recover some video footage from our video system. So I think they're getting closer to perhaps coming up with a vehicle. That's going to be very important. A lot of the investigative steps that are being taken place, we're not hearing about. You know, when they do the press conference, they're talking about generalities. They're talking about stuff that, you know, the blood drops. And there was one thing, though, that I think is very important, and it really hasn't been said one way or the other. If it was forced entry into the home, that tells me total stranger. If someone secreted himself into that home, that would mean they would have to know the lay of the land, and that would lead me to believe that someone close to the victim, Nancy, was able to give the information or perhaps pass off a key. Or the third scenario could be that there was a door that was left unopened. I wouldn't think that that would be likely in this case. She's an 84-year-old woman. It's very dark in the area. You would think that they would lock up very good. So with that said, an FBI agent that was being interviewed yesterday said, oh, I don't think it's important. Doesn't matter one way or the other. No, I disagree with that. Yeah. That's going to make me go in a different direction. If there was forced entry, that's telling me this is an outsider. And if there's not, it's going to be somebody close to the victim.
No, I didn't see any reports on that. As far as the method of entry, did I miss something? I didn't see anything. How
they haven't said one way or the other, Jack, whether it was forced entry or if there isn't forced entry. Every time that they brought it up to the sheriff, he deferred to answer. He's saying, well, we're not going to talk about that. So it's really up in the air. They're holding that back, which I'm okay with. They should just say, we're not ready to discuss that at this point, and end it. Move on to the next question. We talked about that. He's being interrogated instead of giving a press conference. There's a big difference there. And,
I 100% believe that this was planned. There's a lot of planning went into this. For sure. This is not a random people that drove by and said, hey, gee, I like that house. No. Let's go in there and kidnap the 84-year-old lady who's sleeping in a bed. This was planned. They ripped out the cameras. They ripped out the Ring doorbell. They were in there for a while. There was obviously resistance by the victim, 84-year-old Nancy. So I really believe that they planned this. And the whole thing, the follow-up, they want $2 million in Bitcoin. That's what's being reported. Anyway, this just occurred, and this is CBS News reporting on it.
Joining us, we begin on day 6 of the search for Nancy Guthrie. Law enforcement has still not identified any primary suspects in the disappearance of the 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. The local sheriff's department says they are aware of another letter sent to a local news station, but have not provided further detail. Despite that, officials are still expressing hope of Nancy's return.
People will ask me, well, Sheriff, why do you believe she's alive? Why do you believe she's dead? We don't have evidence either way. I have to allow the evidence to convince me what it is we're looking at.
At first, Ransom note that law enforcement said they're taking seriously, gave a deadline of last night at 5 p.m. After that deadline passed, Nancy's son posted another video issuing a plea to whoever may be holding his mother.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to.
I just want to note, Jack, and I don't know, I'm sure you noticed he's looking down. He had a script written for him by whether it was the FBI. So that's where you would come in. Someone like you would come in and telling the son of Nancy Guthrie, this is what you should say. These are things that won't trigger the kidnappers. These are things that will keep them talking. These are things hopefully they'll open up. But if you say the wrong thing, just as in Jack, as you know, in hostage negotiation, you can trigger the hostage taker and have him become uncooperative immediately.
So this is known in the hostage, genre of a third-party intermediary. When we look to use someone else, to help the negotiation process, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. somebody that the hostage taker knows that they want to talk to. So we have to understand first, before that can even happen, why does this hostage taker want to speak to this particular individual? Or why do we want to look to use this particular individual to speak to the hostage taker? What's the dynamics between the two? What's their relationship? Is it harmonious? Is it adversarial? Are they willing to cooperate with our efforts by kind of saying what we want them to say? Or when I put this person on to talk to the hostage taker, are they going to say, "Hey, Joe, you better not come out. You got the snipers right on the roof, right outside the door." All right, so we have to really vet this very, very carefully before we would look to use somebody else in this type of venue. And that's what, to your point, Bill, that's what seems to be happening here. So it was scripted because they want to be very careful what he put out there and not maybe give away any information that the police don't want him to know about. So that's probably what it might be, to your point.
Absolutely. Let me go back to his statement.
Hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
CBS News reporter Andres Gutierrez joins us now from Tucson, Arizona. Andres, what do we know about the second message that officials are looking into?
Lindsay, the CBS station here in Tucson says it has received a new message regarding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. The station says it was forwarded late this afternoon, and they have sent it over to law enforcement. The Pima County Sheriff's Department ended up issuing a statement in response to them receiving that note, saying, quote, "The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department are aware of a new message regarding Nancy Guthrie. Investigators are actively inspecting the information provided in the message for its authenticity." So the big questions now, is it from the same people or group that ended up sending that first one? Did they use the same untraceable service to email to the television station as they did with the first note? The FBI is now the lead agency handling this ransom note. They're also the ones that are offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie or an arrest in this case. As for they're trying to verify the latest note, they have investigators also found out conducting interviews, including family members. Law enforcement officials have said that they are speaking to anyone who may have had contact with Mrs. Guthrie, and that this is a common practice to rule out potential suspects and to build a timeline on the victim's last known whereabouts. In an interview this afternoon, the sheriff, Chris Nanos, told CBS News that tests do confirm that the blood found at the home belongs to Nancy Guthrie, but he would not speculate about the injuries. He also says that there is still hope that she's alive because there is no evidence either way, that investigators are right now reviewing hundreds of vehicles that may have been in and around the area around the time of her disappearance.
And you spoke.
I'm just someone in the chat is saying both letters came through and they were hard copies. That's not true. They were emails.
Email.
TVs. And one of the reasons that is because a hard copy can have DNA on it, can have fingerprints on it, have all kinds of things. So this is hostage taking, kidnapping 2026 version. They're using emails, but law enforcement also has ways to track emails. Mike, you want to talk about that?
I had a question for Jack. I'm sorry.
Well, that's too bad. I'm the host. Answer that question.
No, I mean, anybody that would use a handwritten, letter today in today's date with your handwriting and your DNA and your fingerprints is crazy. It's not going to be like something you'd see in a movie where they cut little letters out and paste them to a piece of paper. They look like they come from a magazine. But the hardest part is, I guess, is trying to figure out, where it originated from. We know with the BTK killer, how they really closed in on the end was when he sent an email to like the local police department, and they realized that they figured out what server it was from, and they closed the case real quick at that point. That was the final straw. So the hard part is these guys seem pretty. I'm going to say guys. These guys are pretty savvy. They're not looking for cash like in a big old bundle. They're looking for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, as far as I know, it can be undiscoverable once it gets sent out. And it's not like we're dealing with dollar bills like Little Lindbergh kidnapping, where they had gold certificates. and there was the serial numbers on the bills. This is a totally different scenario. And I think that, the public may not realize just how different maybe what Jack sees nowadays and sees today than when he started, years ago. The total different electronic dynamic, it just changes everything.
Mike, I didn't mean to. I did that for comic relief. You can ask Jack a question right now if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I just had a question. Jack, do you find that having the family make these pleas publicly, hoping that the kidnappers will see and react positively, do you find that's useful, or do you find that it's just to make the family feel better? Do you find it's effective in any way?
I don't know how effective that might be, Mike. I think it's more so the family feels that they're doing something and trying to, participate in this process here. No doubt about it. They have multiple news networks on. They probably have multiple televisions going at the same time, following all this news coverage. Right. And maybe Nancy, hopefully she's still alive. She's maybe seeing this as well, so she knows that her family cares about her. So from an emotional perspective, I think it has some benefit. I don't think it's going to have an impact on the hostage taker or takers, probably more than one, no doubt. But I think it does serve some purpose. So I think it can't hurt, but I'm not sure how much it's going to help on the other side of it as well. But a great question, yeah.
Jack, I'm going to direct this question to you and Phil, because you're the two Italians here.
Hey, yo.
Nice done.
Two Italians from Brooklyn. Anyway, yesterday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, was the deadline that the kidnappers demanded that, basically their demands be met. That came and went. How dangerous is that? And the next deadline is Monday. Now, Monday will be, what do we got? Today's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That'll be the 9th day. We'll be going on the 9th day. And this lady's 84 years old, Nancy Guthrie, without her medication. Won't the kidnappers also at this point in the 9th day maybe get tired of it and say, something, maybe we should cut our losses and either cut this lady loose or kill this lady and get the hell out of Dodge?
Bury her someplace and just take off, and leave. Try to get on a plane or someplace before they are discoverable. So I think so, because unless they send some kind of proof of life, they send something. Not to be overly dramatic, but as you see in sometimes the movie, they'll send something, article of clothing or something to one of the news outlets, so that we do have her. Look, here's something tangible that we can point to. So I don't know.
Well, Jack, do you remember, and I don't know if you're old enough, I'm probably older than you, but with the son of Sam,
sure.
He was sending letters to Jimmy Breslin, who was a daily news writer. And he was telling when he was going to hit next, and have the cops wear comfortable shoes because they're going to have to wear them out trying to find me. He was taunting the police.
He was, yeah.
And in this case, I think they're all business. Yeah. They're all business, but at some point they may get spooked. And Phil, for that, I'm going to ask you, what do you think, Phil?
Well, a couple of things, but I want to ask Jack a question at the end of what I'm going to say. The IP addresses, now we live in a technology world. The cyber criminals of today, they can attach, it can go from IP address to IP address. It can go through so many different, maybe even thousands. So it's going to be very hard to track that. But with that said, with a ransom demand and proof of life, they could probably do a quick picture or a video and send that in email to authenticate that there is proof of life. The question I had for Jack, and this is how I'm thinking, something occurred Saturday night into Sunday morning. There was a major search and all of that. The contact wasn't made, or at least we don't think it was made. That's when the news station got it. The ransom demand was on Wednesday. So what happened in that time? In my mind, did they have her at one location, moved her to another location, get further away? There was some type of a delay. That's about 4 days that took place before they made the contact. So, Jack, in your opinion, your experience, because you've dealt with many hostage situations, what do you think is the reason that there was that period of time, a delay?
It might be that we touched on, and you just touched on as well, Phil, they might just be trying to, try to remove any way that they can be traced. They can just keep it moving along, so they're not in one place where they're more easily to be tracked. So that might be a part of it, at least, that they just they want to just be on the lowdown. And those notes have. I think they said law enforcement believes at least one of them, the messages, at least one of them is maybe legitimate. There's another one that they arrested somebody who's trying to, chime in on this. But so it seems like they right now, at least, they're holding all the cards. They seem to know what they're doing. It does seem to be very well planned out. So I think it's just to keep everybody guessing. PTK, right? You mentioned earlier, Mike. He was very clever as well. Very, until they got him, years later. But he was able to elude law enforcement for many years. So that might have something to do with it, but falls short of positive knowledge, of course, Phil.
So, folks, this police off the cuff real crime stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Share us with your friends and your family. Make lots of comments. It helps our algorithm. It helps our show to grow. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel members, 5 different levels, and you can become a club member of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. This case is, it's almost like a movie, and it's scarily like that, where you're thinking like, did these guys watch some movie and come up with this idea? Because this hasn't been done. And Jack Cambria, who's one of the most famous hostage negotiators in the world, taught it for years, 34 years with the NYPD. His teams were investigating 42 hostage situations a month back in the day, right? Yeah. But Jack will tell you most of his cases were probably drug dealers getting kidnapped, most of them, right? Or bad guy kidnappings, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. We had 3 categories of response. There was the actual hostage situations, and they were mostly more domestic in nature. Husband, wife, or a couple, elevated to a higher level where now the police had to get involved. Maybe there was drugs involved, maybe there was alcohol involved, and sometimes they'd go on for hours. The second category of response were the barricades, and there's 2 categories of barricades. There was the barricaded perpetrator. When the detectives knocked on the door, I'm not coming out, I'm not going back to jail. I'll shoot it out with the cops before I come out. So, okay, the negotiator, we're going to now talk to you. And then the second category of barricade are the emotionally disturbed, the mentally ill, those that are no longer responsible for themselves. So now we as negotiators have to become responsible for them and try to rearrange their thinking process. And then the third category of response were those suicidal jumpers, either from a bridge, gird of a bridge, from a rooftop, high-rise in New York City. And if they were still standing when we would arrive, then we're going to talk to them to try to rearrange their thinking process from what they want it to be to what we want it to be. Of course, safe as all of that. The one thing, one advantage that we have or do have as hostage negotiators in this context, not this context because we don't know where the individual is, but is a strong tactical presence whenever we negotiate. So the philosophy of that is that, listen to that subject. You can either talk to me, the negotiator, but if you don't want to talk to me, you're going to have to talk to them, the tactical team. And more likely than not, it's a motivator for them to talk to me. All right. So now I'm starting to hold some of the cards a little bit. I try to appear as that velvet glove that fits over the iron fist of the tactical team. So let me get you out of this, because it's just so long that I can talk to you. If you don't want to cooperate, there's one point then that chief, the incident commander, is going to make a decision. We may have to come in there. So let's try to get this resolved beforehand. So I try to show that I'm becoming an advocate of sorts for that subject. Let me help you out of this, before you have to talk to them guys. But in this context, now we don't know where they are. So we don't have that element of force, as a threat to that.
Jack, as you said, the kidnappers here have all the cards. They have all the aces. And really, the only thing that the police, the law enforcement cannot do, they cannot negotiate without getting a proof of life. That is, to me, is a no-no. It's a zero-sum game. You cannot negotiate with them unless they give a proof of life. And Jack, you alluded to the fact I said on earlier shows, you got to ask her a question that only she knows the answer to. And if they come back and say, "Oh, she doesn't," then she's no longer with us.
Right.
But that is something that law enforcement cannot negotiate with. We get a proof of life, or there is no deal. Negotiations stop. Because imagine if they pay the ransom and she's no longer with us.
Right, exactly. And that would be part of the dialogue, I think, between the negotiator and that subject, if they were able to talk to him. Listen, the family wants to cooperate. They want to cooperate. They can afford to give this money to you, but we can't do anything unless we absolutely know that she's alive. And what's your plan? If you get the money, when you get the money, what's your plan? How will this be? What would you do with Nancy in this case? Will you drop her on the road someplace and you call 911? They'll pick her up, or what's the plan? Or do we give the plan? Will they be receptive to that? But that's the dialogue. The family wants to cooperate, and we'll work about if they do pay that up. We'll try to get that individual later on and try to get that money back if possible. But I think that's the family's concern is not so much the money, but more about getting Nancy back. Right?
100%. 100%. From the chat at Danny Lee. The first outlet received the first ransom on Monday the 2nd. It was not reported until afterwards when TMZ and one other outlet received the same letter as confirmed by the FBI. So again, thank you for that. Thank you for your comments. Very difficult to ascertain the whether or not you can verify, yes, this is the kidnappers. Because they've already locked one guy up for sending a fake ransom note in. And as we know, Jack, and all four of us know, there's a million crackpots out there that are just people, it's like during response to the World Trade Center, people were calling in bomb threats. So we're like, what? The biggest bomb on earth just went off. Why are people still calling in? They were coming in like every 10 seconds, a new bomb threat. I was just like, what idiot is calling in bomb threats like now? But I'm just comparing it to this. There's people actually trying to take advantage of a very bad situation. Mike, you got something to say?
No, just when you get the people who they want to insert themselves. We see this quite often with emotional subjects. We see in Minnesota and things like that. They want to inject themselves, and with AI, they can do it much faster, much easier. They can do it remotely. They get some sort of satisfaction. But what they're doing is they're obstructing governmental administration. They're blocking a police investigation. Sadly, they don't realize that they could actually be harming, not just being a part of. Oh, I sent this. This is funny. I messed up with the police, but they could actually end up perhaps. If poor Nancy is still alive, they could end up screwing around with the hostage takers and actually maybe cause her death. It's just ridiculous. And anybody that thinks that it's the least bit entertaining, least bit funny, they could themselves be found in tremendous legal problems when this is all over.
You know something, Mike? I feel the same way about some of the broadcast stations. I think they're playing with fire too. They're injecting themselves too much into this, where they want to be the heroes, or they want to be first to come up with this information, that they want to say who the person of interest is when there is none. I find that to be dangerous. And this woman is kidnapped. She's with criminals. These are criminals. These are bad people. They're not good people, right? She's being held against her will. Yeah. And broadcast media thinks, oh, well, let's get involved in this.
They want clicks, Billy. A lot of people that, whether it be podcasts or if it's the cable news, they're looking for attention. They're looking for clicks. But with all the cyber criminals that are out there today, I know of a case where a guy who owns a big company in New York City, he was ransomware for $80,000 in Bitcoin. FBI came to him. He never even notified the FBI. They were so anxious to get their business back up and running that they paid the $80,000, and the FBI knocked on the door because they had removed the $80,000 and sent it to Bitcoin, and they said it was tracked to someplace in Russia. So in a case like this, where you have people looking for Nancy Guthrie, and then these cyber criminals, they inject themselves into it to try and make money, and they're in Russia or China or wherever the heck they are. That's what we really have to be careful that we're not being duped by some cyber criminals. So I think that that's one of the challenges the FBI and law enforcement has in this case.
I have to wonder if they anticipated this type of media response to kidnappers, because most kidnappers, they want to be stealth. They want to be below the radar and just deal with the family, get their money, and run, right? So I don't know if they anticipated this type of media response, but they got it now. So it's going to be that much harder for them. But like you said, they can transfer this Bitcoin in a secret account someplace. Once it's transferred, they can transfer to another account and then never be traced, the way that I'm understanding it. But I'm not sure if they anticipated this type of media response, because it's not the preferred method by kidnappers. They want to be on the low down with this.
Jack, we used to say on the DL. Come on, Jack.
Yeah.
On the down low. On the down low it was.
Don't give away all our verbs.
You reversed it, Jack. You said the low down. Maybe that's the Brooklyn way. And the Manhattan North way was on the DL.
Help me out here about Brooklyn. He's getting on Brooklyn over here. Come on.
Anyway, this right before we came on the air. This was happening around Nancy Guthrie's home.
In front of Nancy's home, where Brian Enton has been camped out throughout the day. And a few minutes ago, it sounds like you guys were told to leave, Brian, and now you're on the phone with us. What's going on? Do we know?
Yeah, there's been a lot of activity here, Connell, within the last 15 minutes or so. I'm going to step out of the way and show you. They've made all the media leave. They've shut down the entire road about 2 blocks in front of Nancy Guthrie's house, and I just saw basically a cavalry of FBI vehicles arriving. It looked like evidence response teams. They're in the pickup trucks and the vans with all of their equipment in the back. And I can see down the road, they're now pulling into Nancy Guthrie's driveway. And I asked one of the deputies, are you moving us out of here because the neighbors complained before the FBI showed up? And she said, no, this is for investigative purposes, which now makes sense because all of these FBI teams just showed up and pulled back into the driveway, which is interesting, Connell, because think about it. You had the first crime scene, then they took the crime scene tape down, opened it back up. Then 2 days ago, we saw them set up another crime scene. They went in for 2 hours, took the crime scene tape down. And now here we are on Friday, where all of a sudden, not only are they going to put the crime scene tape back up, but they have shut down the entire area with the FBI arriving. And the timing is also interesting because right before this happened, we got word of a second communication that has been sent to a local TV station here in Tucson related to Nancy Guthrie. So is that a coincidence that the second communication has now arrived and they've shut the entire area down, Connell?
Give me a little perspective. I thought you were on the phone, but you still have the camera up, Ryan, right? So hop back in front if you can. There you are. All right. So where are you versus where you were? Those cones they're down the street from the house, or?
Yeah, these cones are down the street from the house, and Mo will zoom into where we were standing. Mo's going to zoom into where our last live shot was, right in front of the house.
Okay.
So the house is right around. You can't see it from here because of all the brush, but the house is right around the corner. And so everybody's been set up all along that block because that's where the house is. And now they've closed the block down to make room for all of these FBI folks who continue to arrive here, Connell.
And is it a lot? Is that what it is? A lot? I know those guys look like local sheriff's deputies, but there's a lot of FBI from what you can see.
Yeah, so the sheriff's deputies are out here kind of controlling the traffic and the cones, but I saw the FBI arriving in like 4 Suburbans. There was a van, there was a pickup truck, and the windows were tinted, but I looked like as close as I could when they were trying to kick me out, but I was trying to look at the same time, and I could see the FBI, emblems on their shirts as they were coming in.
Yeah, so
that definitely wasn't NYPD because they'd have a box of Dunkin' Donuts with them, if they were going to that scene. But you know what? It struck me about this right away. Some boss just got pissed off and said, "Get the press the hell out of there. They're swarming all over the place. That's still a crime scene. Move them back 1,000 feet." And that's my take on this. First of all, they should have secured that crime scene much. I cannot believe that they have video and still photos of the front door with her blood on it all over the national media. Why were they allowed even to get that close, Phil?
It's beyond belief to me that they released it as quickly as they did. They shouldn't have released it at the time that they did. And then they went back a second time. Now it's like a B run. We know there's the original in the NYPD, there's the crime scene run. Then there's an A run if you want them back. And now it's up to a B run, it looks like, because as Brian Enton just reported, they went there with the pickup trucks that have crime scene, equipment to gather evidence. So there's maybe something in the latest letter that led them to say, you know what? Get the press back, like you said, Billy. They were in the way where this is becoming a circus over here, and let's do what we have to do and get it over with, so we don't have to do it a fourth time or a third or fourth time. So that's what it seems like to me. But I think the fact that it's in conjunction with the latest letter ransom demand at the same time, it might have something to do with that. We don't know, or someone just said, you know what, let's go do this at the scene and let's go do that, and that's what they're doing.
I noticed the road going up right in front of our house, like a gravel road, maybe.
Yeah.
Road. So I was wondering if they even pulled the vehicle up to her front door, or did they have it on the main road? Yeah, there you go. Was there tire tracks that they were able to maybe retrieve, or footprints that they were able to retrieve? So this is like two tire tracks going up the road right there.
When one of the press conferences, he was Sheriff Chris Nanos was asked that, and he deferred. He said no. He's negative on that. But who knows if they did with all the traffic that was there. I mean, within the first day, you had a reporter that went right up to the front door and videotaped the blood dropping. So, I mean, that's a little.
That's outrageous. That's how that crime scene. Not protecting the crime scene 101. Are you kidding me? Look, I learned a lot under Chief Resnick, who was the chief of Manhattan detectives. And he was a deputy inspector when I was in the 2-3 squad in Manhattan North Homicide Squad. And he was a fantastic investigator. He was. Very harsh, crude man. I mean, he had no patience for the press at all. And when he was interviewed on television, he said, no comment. No comment. No comment. And after a while, the press got annoyed at him and they stopped asking questions. But anything about the crime scene, he wasn't going to tell them, because he was from the old school that belongs in the venue of the police. And when we're ready to tell you, when someone's in handcuffs, we'll let you know how we did it. We don't need, and I love when the press is always saying, we should have No, you shouldn't. Where'd you get that word from? That's politics, transparency. It does not belong in police work. Mike.
Bill, it muddies the waters. It gets, the public needs to know certain things, very limited. If there's any way the police that believe that the public can help, I'm all for it. We saw it in remember the Boston bombing. That was an excellent use of the public's, video cameras and important information that they had. That's great. But if you're not looking for that kind of solution or that kind of help, there's no reason to have, Sheriff Nanos out there in front of a podium. They should have
And Mike, he's not trained to do that. You could see it. He dribbles all over himself. He stumbles all over himself because, and we all know that. That's a PR thing. You have to be trained to do that. And most of us right here, we couldn't do that. We dribble all over ourselves.
Billy, at one point, somebody, I think it was somebody from his public relations office, they took him away from the stage because it was becoming an interrogation. And what you just said about Chief Resnick, we're going to tell you this, we're going to tell you that. It happened at 2 a.m., blah, blah, blah. And when they ask a question, you're going to take a few questions. We're not going to comment on that now. We're not going to comment on that. We're not at liberty to discuss that right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is an investigation. You need to keep a lot of things close to the vest. That's the integrity of the investigation. And what's the goal here? The goal is to save this poor woman's life. She's in jeopardy. She's 84 years old. She's got medical conditions. She needs medication. This is not a game. And we don't need the circus clown show that's going on over there. I like the idea that they pushed everybody back now, because that, no matter what you say, it's a crime scene. At some point, will they say we've done enough examination and recover of evidence and we're going to release the crime scene back to the family? Yeah, but it happened a little too quick. Anyway, let's move forward with it. Let's try and get to the goal. The goal is bringing this woman home alive. That's the most important thing.
Phil, I know you're a Catholic, and in Catholicism, there's something called Cannon's Law. And on the NYPD, there's something called Cannon's Law too, Sergeant Cannon. And what it stands for is you play the press like a fiddle. Don't have them play you like a fiddle.
Oh, listen, we need them. There's no question.
You use the press but don't let them use you, because they can really compromise an investigation.
But the information you give them is what they should run with. And when there's erroneous information, that's not responsible coverage. You can point that out in your next press conference. I never said that. Here's what I said. And listen, like you said, this is a certain a person that is trained in that type of public relations and messaging. In this case, it's a little off, but we got to give them a break. In the first 48 hours, nobody caught a wink of sleep. So let's just give them the break on that, and we're going to move forward. We get the FBI involved. They got all the bells and whistles, all the toys, all the investigative things that need to be accomplished in this case. And I guess it's just a matter of time at this point. One way or another, this case is going to be settled. So let's just hope and pray that she is alive.
Lieutenant Jack, Monday is the second deadline. How important is that? How important is it for law enforcement to solve this case before we even get to that second deadline? I don't have a great feeling in my gut about the second deadline. How about you?
So we don't know about deadlines. How it kind of works in hostage negotiations, because we get deadlines all the time. If I don't get what I want by 3 o'clock, there's going to be some problems in this room here. So how we handle that in hostage negotiation work is we work through the deadlines. So if they tell me 3 o'clock, well, at 3 o'clock, I'm not going to remind them that it's 3 o'clock. I'm going to keep working through that deadline. And then if they call me on that, hey, it's 10 after 3. I told you 3 o'clock. Well, I'm going to have a comeback. Say, listen, we're making some progress here. Let's not let a little time get in the way of us continue to make progress. We're doing good. So I'm going to kind of sell it, talk it to them. In fact, there's only really one documented case, and it goes back to 1993 in Rochester, New York, where a bank robber acted on a deadline, and he used that 3 o'clock deadline. He wanted the police to kill him. There was some psychosis attached to this guy, and he told the police around 11 o'clock he had a teller call in and say he wants the police to shoot him at 3 o'clock, and he knew that these snipers were set up in a steeple, church steeple across the way. So at 3 o'clock, he goes by that window, plate glass window of the bank, and he stands there waiting for the police to shoot him. They do not. So at that point, he grabs one of the tellers and he marches her to the front door with a shotgun. He blows her out the door with a shotgun, kills her. Her name was Margaret Moore. And then he went back to the window, and this time they accommodated him. They shot him. That's the only documented case of a
deadline.
Acted on a deadline. So statistically speaking, very few deadlines are acted upon. But never say never in hostage negotiation work and police work, for that matter. So to your question, Bill, should we be concerned? Yeah. Never assume an end result, but we always have to be concerned about them. And as I said, we don't have that individual, contained in one location where we did act on a deadline, where we can storm in with the SWAT team with ESU in New York, and end that. We don't know where he is, so that's the problem. That's all.
Lieutenant Jack, I want to ask one question here. It seems, it is. The kidnappers are running this.
Yeah.
They're in control.
Well, absolutely.
How does law enforcement gain the upper hand? How do they gain control? And is it important for them to gain control?
Yeah, it is. And again, but step one is first trying to get the location. I'm not sure where TMZ got that information, how they were able to put that out there. But something that maybe law enforcement can follow up on. Where'd you get this information? Why do you say Tucson? What's that about? So maybe just try to track that down. We spoke about technology earlier. There's a lot of technology out there now. Drones, right? If they can get an idea, if they can track down that white van, if it was a suspicious vehicle. There's a lot of investigative leads that I'm sure there's a whole team, task force. You mentioned Son of Sam earlier. They had a whole task force working on that. So I'm sure there's a lot of brilliant investigators out there that are working the different angles of this, taking phone calls, trying to get any kind of leads that they can. But until they can identify, where these individuals might be, where she might be, Nancy, right now they are holding the cards.
Early on in this investigation, I said, and Mike, I think, was with me, and Phil, is that whoever did this we believe, knows her, and either knows her as an acquaintance or knows of her from being from this area, because they know too many things. They did too many things. They knew how to rip out the cameras without being seen on the cameras. They knew how to get in. They knew where she was staying. They knew what you think they would kidnap someone that had no access to money. They knew she was from an affluent family. She has a daughter that's a broadcast anchor on NBC, right, national TV. So it's not a stranger. It's not four guys driving by and hey, look at the size of that house. She must have money. Let's go in and kidnap her. I don't believe it is that. Look at the size of this house right there. That's from a drone shot, right? So I believe that it's known to. So somewhere, and we say this all the time, the victimology, the study of the victim, somewhere in the back, her background, therein lies the people that did this. And it's the job of law enforcement to find out who these people are. Phil.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that in the peripheral of her world, maybe someone connected to a maintenance worker, a pool guy, whatever it is, someone gave information. I think it's likely, and then out, like I said, peripherally, there will be the persons that executed this kidnapping. And I think that the investigative work by the detectives is going to be what's going to solve this. But there's something else that's going to solve it. Tips. We need tips, and something that, you know, might seem very trivial to a person in that area. Report it. Let the investigators decipher whether or not it's relevant to the case, because sometimes a little thing can turn into a big thing. It's a lot of little tips that sometimes lead up to the linchpin on a case that turns the whole thing from a kidnapping to a safe recovery. That's what we're going to hope for. With regard to this, the FBI putting out a $50,000 reward, I said it before we went on the air. If it were my family and I had the funds, I would offer from the family a larger reward, maybe $500,000, because wherever this woman is being held, there's people that know about it, whether it be a friend, a relative, a loved one, a mother, a father, whatever it is, there's somebody that's got information. When you waive $500,000 as a reward for information on this case, that's life-changing for a lot of people. $50,000 is a lot of money, but I think $500,000 is a lot more, and this will maybe produce the right tip that's going to lead to the conclusion and the safe return of this woman. If I were part of that family, that's what I'd be doing. I know law enforcement is probably saying, no, let's not do that. We don't want to upset the kidnappers, that we're being proactive, but there is a $50,000 reward. The family should offer their own reward.
You know, Phil, as we say on the streets of New York, money talks.
Bullshit
walks.
And I believe what you said, that it might be someone that knows that family. Maybe someone knew that she wasn't paying her subscription to that Ring camera. Maybe they, you know, the house. There's the picture you showed just a little while ago, Bill. There's a house next door. There's a couple of houses there. Sure, I think Phil said it earlier. There's got to be cameras on those houses. They had to make egress some way, right? So in order to do that, maybe they were captured on video somehow. Maybe they passed by that gas station as video. So
there's large intersections within, I'd say, about when I looked at an aerial view that was on television on cable news earlier, it looks like there's large intersections just at maybe 7-8 blocks away. And like you just said, Jack, someone had to get into that area and leave that area. They had to get in and they had to get out, and they had to, in this day and age in 2026, they had to pass some type of a camera somewhere.
Yeah, like this kid, Luigi Mangini, they tracked him riding his bike up to Harlem. They tracked him, and they were able to, you know, to find out who he was. So the technology is out there. I know how prevalent it is. You know, back in that, it's more of a, looks like a rural area a little bit, but there's got to be surveillance out there somewhere, I would think. Right?
You know, and also, Jack, there's everywhere there's license plate readers, and somewhere, as Phil said, there's only like 2 roads that go in and out of this location. So the car that was driven up to her house, the car, the van, the truck, or numerous cars, had to pass a license plate reader, had to pass Ring cameras. So it is painstaking work. I mean, when people think, oh, just pull a video, they don't understand You don't just pull it. Now you got to watch it, sometimes for 8, 10 hours, and the detective's got to sit there and sit.
Very boring and very
Oh
painful.
yeah, it's not like the easy button like you see on TV. It's really difficult, tedious work. And having said that, detectives know how to do that, and they do that all the time, and that's how they solve these cases. So
the good thing, Billy, is they have a time frame with the pacemaker not connecting with the I think it was an Apple Watch, so they kind of have a timeline that they can narrow down. You look, if you say it's 2:00, so you start at 1:48 or 1:50 somewhere around there, and you go a little past, and then you can narrow it down. So I think that's working in their favor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Some of the things that we have Jack here. There has to be a negotiation strategy. I don't know if that's clear right now. And police have to control the communication, stall for proof of life. We don't have a proof of life. We don't know if Nancy Guthrie is alive or dead at this point. We're all praying that she's still alive. Never meet demands immediately. We got to negotiate, right? If you meet them immediately, they're going to think you're a pushover and you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, right? We got to use all the technology, voice analysis, but they're not even really talking to them. So really it's computer tracing the emails through internet protocols and that type of thing. And the crime scene, again, they just kicked all the press out of the crime scene. And I don't know specifically who gave that order and why, but I could see that potentially someone took over as the big boss of this and said, look, the press is all over this. Get them the hell out of here. We don't need them breathing down our necks. We don't need them putting out false information. So move them back 1,000 feet or whatever. That sounds like a big boss on our job would do that. I don't know if they do it in Arizona, but it looks like they did it on in this instance. Yeah. So look, this is day 6. They just got as we came on the air, they got a new ransom note that they're saying apparently looks legit. So that's going to open up another Pandora's box of investigation. And we're going to be staying with this case as it moves along. I'm going to go through each one of our guests. I'm going to give them final remarks. As I told Jack, I try to get him out of here in an hour, and we've already gone over by about 6 minutes. Anyway, just to recap who we are, on the left corner beneath me is Professor Mike Guthrie, retired NYPD Sergeant. The upper right is Lieutenant Jack Cambria, one of the best hostage negotiators and teaches not just NYPD in the world. He teaches everyone, FBI, every law enforcement agency there is, all different nationalities, all different countries. And below him is retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Your final comments.
I think that the people should be really happy that the FBI is really now in the lead. The first couple of days, maybe the mayhem was caused by a small rural county sheriff being overwhelmed and not expecting the kind of media coverage that occurred. But with the FBI, they've got all the tools, they've got all the bells and whistles. They've got a lot more professionalism, a lot more experience. And I think this case, when it is solved, and it will be solved for better, for worse, it'll be solved through technology that the FBI has the ability to track. And I think that's how this case is going to end up.
Good thoughts. Phil, I'm going to go to you next, and I'm going to finish with Lieutenant Jack. Phil, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Some of the things I said earlier, we live in a surveillance saturation society. Almost every move leaves a trail. I think that's going to be some of the key to solving this case. I cannot imagine what this family is going through. 6 days. They don't know where their mother is. They don't know if she's alive. This has got to be unbelievable stress for that family. I want to have great hope, thoughts, and prayers for this family and for the safe return of Nancy Guthrie. Let's hope and pray to God that she can be brought back home to her family, and this whole situation can be brought to an end with a great conclusion. That's what I'm going to hope for, and I'm just going to ask everybody out there, just have a good thought and a quick prayer for that.
Absolutely. Jeremy Pearson, MN, thank you for the $5 super stick. I just read that neighbors noticed a white van lurking in the days leading up to this. Said, yeah, Jeremy, we did mention that, and the police, the investigators have checked that out. I don't know what the results were, but they have absolutely checked that out. Lieutenant Jack Cambria, hostage negotiator extraordinaire. Your final thoughts.
I think it's curious to me, and I'm sure to anyone that thinks about it, that the kidnappers have to know they have to produce proof of life. And why not? Why have they not done that up to this point? Maybe they can't. A little more abstract, perhaps. Is it even a kidnapping at all? Maybe the police have to start thinking in different areas. I think was it a kidnapping to maybe do away with Miss Nancy for insurance purposes? Maybe there's a great insurance policy out on somebody. Maybe it's a kidnapping for hire. So the police are thinking, I think, in all different areas. They have to. So on the surface, it's a kidnapping, but maybe there's more to it. We don't know that. So it's just going to have to follow through. But I am curious as to why the kidnappers, and we're going to go with that theory right at the moment, why haven't they produced some proof of life if they want to get that money and move on and get out of the situation altogether? So that's curious to me. And to Phil's thought, sending good karma that way, and hopefully it's going to be resolved and she's going to come out of this safely.
Thank you, Lieutenant Jack. I want to really thank Lieutenant Jack, retired Lieutenant Jack Cambria, because we're,
thank you.
We still are who we were when we were on the job, but we're all four of us here are retired. We still retain our rank of when we left. And I want to especially thank Lieutenant Jack, because every news station on earth was asking him to come on. He said no, but he said yes to the Police Off the Cuff podcast.
And he's the best of the best, Bill. That's no bullshit.
Well, I appreciate that.
You really are, Jack. You're a gentleman, and you're a great hostage negotiator.
And I forgot to say that they actually call him Gentleman Jack.
That's right.
I got more bottles of Christmas time from the negotiators of Gentleman Jack. So, but Mike, I was just in your great state last week. I was teaching a hostage class last week in Stanford.
Nice. Great.
So I don't know how far you are from there, but
not too far. Not too far. Just right up 95.
There you go. Yeah. So great people, really great people. And very cold out there, and more snow than we had in Brooklyn, I got to tell you. So
good. I also want to thank everyone that was listening tonight, and people are telling me in the chat we're at 99,900 subscribers, and we should hit 100,000 subscribers tomorrow, which has been my goal for like 6 years. For whatever reason, the show took a long time to hit the six figures, and I really do believe that we're one of the best crime shows on YouTube. But I can't pat myself. The audiences have to show that. Anyway,
I can attest to all your hard work, Billy. I know you. I've been doing this with you for over 5 years, and there's nobody I know that works harder at this than you. 100%.
Well, thank you so much.
You deserve the 100,000.
And I want to thank all the people that made it possible. The people
Absolutely.
that watch us day after day, week after week, and we really, because you're the guys that made us make this. And Jack, thank you so much, because I called you about 4 hours ago and you said, "Yeah, Bill, come on in." And I really appreciate that, Jack. That's really great. So, folks, we're Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories on behalf of Professor Mike Geary, Detective Phil Grimaldi, and Lieutenant Gentleman Jack Cambria. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night, all. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
One episode just ain't enough.